Welcome to the podcast. We Do Recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about addiction, but more importantly, about recovery.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
You're listening to episode 11 of We Do Recover. I'm your host, Jared Miller. Today I'm joined via the web by your co-host and our medical expert, Dr. Terry Sellers. He is sidetracked at the moment. He says hi. We are also...
Hello.
Hello. There he is.
Welcome, everybody. Sorry, my cord just got unplugged, but I'm good now.
We also have in the house the producer, the best producer this side of the equator, Sean Denovan.
Wow, you keep pushing me farther and farther. I mean, I'm happy with this side of the Virgin River. We can keep it with that. First it was Mississippi, now it's the equator. What's next?
That's right. Hey, it may be international next week.
Okay,
South Pole.
That's right. We have two featured guests for you today. We have Crystal Hannig, the amazing therapist at Steps Recovery Centers.
Hey.
Welcome. And then we have her husband, Tyson Hannig, the proud owner of Vaporworks.
Look at you trying to make me sound important.
Super excited to have them on today. This podcast is recorded in sunny St. George, Utah. Episode 11, Part 1 is brought to you by Steps Recovery Centers, where addiction ends and healing begins. Listen, if you or a loved one needs help, give them a call. Pick up the phone, 801-800-8142. Let's just do a little check-in. Dr. Sellers, what's good with you, buddy?
What is good? Well, everything's good. I have all new bottom teeth. I've been talking about this on previous podcasts, so if I sound a little bit different or if I've got a little bit of a lisp, it's because I haven't learned how to speak with these things yet. But they look great. They feel terrible.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you for the update. Let's get into our guests, Mr. and Mrs. Hannig. What's new and good in your guys' life?
You know, life is peachy. You know, I'm actually, I didn't know that Steps was one of the sponsors of this. You know, so to actually have one of their therapists here, it's probably a great honor for you guys.
It is. It is a great honor.
First and foremost, and before we get started, I think we should give our host a hard time. You know.
Okay,
so
let's get it.
When you first asked me to do this, you sent me a text message that said, "Hey, will you do it on the 27th?"
Yes.
And then it was followed up with November 27th.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, man, this guy's got his stuff together. I mean, he's putting us that far out, man.
Yes.
You know? And then informed me earlier this week that, hey, could you come in Friday? You know? So worked out. We're here, you know.
We had a guest drop out. Remember, I told you, I said, you're the next up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody drops out, you're the next up.
So feeling super important today.
Thank you. Absolutely. How are you doing, Crystal?
I'm doing good. I'm wondering what he did and why he was being so nice when he was talking about me in the beginning.
Well, I mean, you guys are married, right? It's
Yeah.
all about the brownie points.
Absolutely.
Very nice. Sean Denovan, what's new and good in your life, buddy? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what happened to Terry.
Uh-oh.
We lost him again.
Yeah. No, he's there.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm here.
My new and good is fixing the problem during the podcast rather than before.
Yeah.
I love it.
So you go ahead and start and I'll fix it. Everything's great. Don't worry about it.
Sounds good. Listen, let's jump into it. So, Mr. and Mrs. Hannig, it's not very often that you have two people, right, that both have had some struggles. We'll call those struggles the disease of addiction, if that's okay with you guys.
Yep.
Okay. A lot of times, even if just one person in a marriage struggles with the disease of addiction, it can end in divorce. You guys are truly an inspiration because you both have struggled with it. You've been able to stay married. Take us through where that began. First of all, how'd you guys meet, right? Like, give us a backstory. How'd you meet? When did you get married? Like, let's get to know you guys.
Oh.
And what led into your addiction.
Do you want to tell him how we met?
Well, yeah. So Crystal lived up in Springdale when I met her.
Springdale, Utah.
Well, actually, it was Springdale.
Rockville.
Rockville, Springdale, same area. And This was back in the days of, me throwing big parties out in the desert, dirt parties as we called them.
The couch
I
parties.
like it. I like
Yeah,
it.
the couch. That was the place where we'd have these big parties, which would be totally like illegal today. There's plenty of rangers up there, but this is 20 plus years ago, so we could kind of get away with a lot here in this town. And so I would regularly go down to what's the first little town right when you get out of the gorge there?
Oh man,
Beaver Dam.
Beaver Dam,
Thank you, Sean.
Arizona. Sean, God, you're awesome.
Yeah, little Jamaica.
Yeah. But better was you could buy cakes there. So we would constantly go down and have these big cake dirt parties. And that's where I first met my wife. Was at a huge raging dirt party.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Little
I love a party with cake.
and dirt and women that end up being your future wife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My tent had a
there was no
mattress
cake.
in it. So.
No cake.
Oh,
and I
no
never got in your
cake. I
tent.
must have misheard that.
Never got in your tent.
That's
Truth's
true.
coming out.
She didn't.
No.
Well, cool. So you guys are out in the desert
Yeah.
having some fun.
Yeah, and that's where we first met. We were actually just friends
For a while.
Yeah, for years.
Kind of. Well, yeah. You
Isn't
have
that
to
the-
apologize once. So-
Yeah, I did have to apologize once.
Isn't that how the
Well-
best relationships long term end up starting though?
I don't know. I'm not a relationship expert.
Good point. Valid. Cool. So Crystal, was it love at first sight?
Wait. I got to know what the apology was about.
Oh yeah. Let's get that.
I don't think I
what'd you
can
have
tell
to
you the story
apologize
on air, man.
We'll just say that obviously we're in recovery. He does not handle his alcohol well
Oh.
and said or did something highly offensive that he didn't remember the next day, but he knew he needed to apologize for something he didn't remember.
Gotcha.
Might have grabbed her butt.
Oh. Dang, getting dangerous out in the desert.
Yeah.
Good time. So was it love at first sight, Crystal? What'd you think of Tyson when you first saw this guy?
But
No, it wasn't really love at first sight. It was, he kind of grew on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like a
And I think-
fungus.
I
was
am definitely like a fungus.
No, but I do remember the moment that it changed and we were at a party because that's what we did then.
Yep.
And he grabbed me one night and kissed me. And
Just like that.
Yeah,
My move.
Yeah. And it was after
Very
that I was
smooth.
like, oh, hey, I kind of like this guy.
What was it about that you liked? Just the braveness, the
I don't even know.
I drove a BMW.
Yeah, he drove something different all the time.
Mm.
I did find him the next morning passed out under his car in a dirt parking lot in the backyard. So, that was my guy.
yeah, there you go.
That was my guy. You're
Awesome.
going to pass out under a
what's
car
not
in the
to
dirt
love?
and not remember you're the one I wanted.
She's like, this one. I'm marrying that one right there.
So you guys get to know each other a little bit better. When were you married? What's your guys' anniversary date?
So we've been together almost 18 years.
Wow.
We skipped marriage. We were together for 10 years before we got married. And we actually got married on 12/21/12.
Nice. Does that make it easy for you to remember, man?
Was the last day of the Mayan calendar, and I thought the world was going to end the next day anyway. So I was like, hey, let's get married, man, And then I woke up the next day, and we were still here, and I was like, oh, we're
Here we go.
married.
The deed's done. Awesome. Way cool. So
Hey, remember those brownie points you got at the beginning?
Yeah, they're gone now.
Just
I
lost
think
him.
you just lost them.
Ah, dang it.
He's usually in the
I could only
negative.
marry her when I thought the world was going to end.
Right, exactly. Well, I do have foot and mouth disease
Yeah.
from what I've told. So
And it was actually my date that I picked.
yeah.
Okay. we'll do
and
that,
to be
Dave.
fair,
Good.
this podcast
You're
is
saved.
and to be fair, this podcast is about addiction and recovery, right? So there may have been something that played into that. So let's lead into that. Let's get your guys' what has it been? What was active addiction like as a married couple?
It was a disaster. It was toxic. The relationship was I love you. I want to be with you, blah, blah, blah. And then it was, oh, wait, I hate you. Get out of here. Wait, I love you. Come back.
So a lot of peaks and valleys, a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah. And I mean, we were, by the addiction took off pretty quick after we met. And it was a mess. There was a lot of using. There was a lot of harm done to each other. Didn't have any kind of coping skills or tools, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
And we had a child pretty early.
Yeah. So, like, when we first met, it was kind of like we're weekend warrior people, We're going out partying on the weekends, going to work 5 days a week, weekends. But it was not long, like, after we got together that the addiction really took off,
When you say weekend warrior, are you talking about at that time, was it just alcohol or was it also narcotics?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't got to get into specifics if you guys don't want to, but I just wondering.
And when someone says just alcohol, like me on alcohol is the worst.
Good point.
The worst thing ever.
Good point.
So,
He's like, what's that guy? What's the famous guy that always gets arrested? One of my famous actors.
Robert Downey Jr.?
Favorite. Yes. He's like a Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there was drugs. There was, I don't know if you want me to mention the substances. I don't care.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Oxycontin and meth.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of Oxycontin and heroin, and it was just, when I think back at that time, it's the memories are really clouded and dark.
Yeah. Yep.
It was painful, like in every sense of the word. And the more painful the relationship was, the more I would use to deal with the pain. And it was just, it was hell on earth, really.
Yeah. At what point did it transition from weekend warrior to, okay, maybe a couple days throughout the week, right? Because we know that the disease of addiction does that. It starts off minimal, and then it somehow winds itself into the everyday fabric of our life.
it was about a half hour.
Half hour? Okay.
Well, there you go.
It really wasn't long, in fact, like the start of our relationship was right into it.
About using.
Yeah.
And so with the Oxycontin, so what happened, I was using Oxycontin for probably about a year.
Okay.
So now this was years ago, and I didn't know that you could get addicted to prescribed medication.
Right.
Nobody, it doesn't come with a warning on the bottle that says if you use longer than 5 days in a row, you're going to experience serious withdrawals if you stop.
Yeah, it's from a doctor, right?
Right. And I really had no idea what I was doing, and had a continuous supply, and I was using them every day, and it was about a year, and I ran out, and I really thought that I was sick, and I almost went to the doctor because I didn't know that it was withdrawals. And so at that point, it was, all bets were off. I remember throwing a hysterical fit because I'd kind of realized what I'd gotten myself into.
So you had cotton 19.
Cotton 19.
We just came up with a new phenomenon, epidemic.
So, and then likewise, similar experience. I was running a car dealership at the time, and I was on Oxys for 3 months straight, not knowing that there was some kind of downfall to using them every day. And once I ran out, same thing. I ran out because she ran out.
Right.
And then started experiencing the symptoms of withdrawals.
I think a lot of people back then didn't really know what to expect like that, right? You start feeling this way and you're like, wait, what's going on? And it takes a minute to correlate the two.
I knew right away. I was
you did?
like, this is what, this has to be withdrawals. And, scared, and at the same time thinking, how do I get more drugs?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I got to go to
never
work.
run out again.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is a common theme, right? Instead of how do I get help, we think, how do I acquire more, which is a thinking error. And yeah. So you mentioned that you had a child pretty early.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, because that's part of your guys' journey.
So we were taking a trip to California,
Okay.
and it was somewhere on the trip to California where we ended up getting pregnant, so to speak, and yeah.
We don't need you to tell us about the
yeah.
conception.
Right.
That's why I was looking over like.
the Lincoln Inn, no. Which hotel it was?
And just to clarify,
Apparently you told us about the conception
Yeah,
already. Never
you're
mind.
welcome.
Yeah. I was the one that got pregnant.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, wait. Really?
Yeah, yeah. He
Imagine.
said we, and I wanted to declare like you didn't grow it too.
Right. Okay.
Oh, I love these two. They are hilarious.
So yeah, we ended up having a kid, and really early in our relationship.
She ended up having a kid.
Yeah, it was magic. Have
I
no
want
idea
to be
how
more
it happened.
part of this kid thing,
he,
don't
wants,
I?
he wants to feel involved. Sellers, let him feel involved.
All right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had been dating for 3 months when I got pregnant, and we had a child, and it was, he's an amazing kid. He just turned 17. His name's Dexter. He's awesome. He's got a personality, and he's just an amazing kid. I also have an older son named Cole that's not his. I also just ended up with that one. Kidding. That's part of my job
awesome.
coming out. It didn't just magically happen.
Right.
So yeah, so I had my older son, and then we had this baby, and it was it was really painful going through a pregnancy and having a child, and also being an addict. I did I did what I could to stop using while I was pregnant, and I found myself, there we go, because I want to deny that part too. I tried I snorted somas sometimes just to try and go through that withdrawal, because I was terrified and I needed to quit. And then I was sitting there pregnant watching everybody use around me. And for me, not having coping skills, not having, all that stuff, I couldn't decide what was more painful, being alone or being with everybody watching them use.
Oh, yeah, great
it was I was so miserable emotionally.
Yeah, so you're facing this battle in your mind, right? You're going, I know I need to stop doing this because I'm growing this baby and I want to be healthy and happy and provide a good life for it. But at the same time, your social circles haven't changed. You're still around people that are in active addiction. That's got it. I could only imagine. I mean, I've never been pregnant and had to experience that.
No?
What?
It may look
We
like it some
have.
days. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
that
I
would be
remember
hard.
the internet was fairly new, and I remember getting online and trying to research all of the side effects of things. And there was this, I get that they didn't know a lot. And by this time I was heavily into meth. Meth was my. I liked them both together, but that was the one that I just could not kick at the end. But I remember researching everything, trying to find something that I could use that would not hurt the baby.
Yeah.
Just desperately trying to do the right thing and fight this disease and the craving. And it was miserable all the way around.
Was there any conversations between the two of you? Like, Tyson, did you know that Crystal was kind of going through that? Did she ever share that with you, or is that something that she kept pretty covered up?
No, not at all. I mean, and I was active in my addiction, and
Sure.
really my part at that point was you're in the way of my addiction,
Yeah.
So when you're locked up in that active addiction, the most important thing to your life is finding, using more. So at that point where she's pregnant, in my head, it's like, well, she's in the way,
Yeah.
She's in the way of what's most important to me, which is drugs,
Right.
substance, anything I can put in my body. So
Sadly, I'm pretty sure listeners that listen to this can understand that.
Yeah.
Maybe some people that are normies, as we refer to them as, they don't understand that, but something happens in the mind where that substance use becomes one of the most important thing. And thank goodness that breathing is subconscious, because it might even overpower breathing, in my opinion.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, the best way that I can describe it is that it is like being possessed. In your head that what you're doing isn't okay. Those thoughts like, why am I doing this? What is wrong with me? Why do I keep? And then, something shuts that up, but your body just keeps going. Even when your head is arguing with what you're doing, you can't stop it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So you have this child. Take us kind of where it went from there. Are you both still working income wise?
I am.
I wasn't.
Okay.
I hear people talk about not being able to keep a job when they're using. I couldn't get a job.
Because
I mean, I would walk into thinking I was going to apply, or, oh, look at me, I'm so like skinny and hot and you're going to want to hire me. And I couldn't even get the job because they were like, whoa, you probably need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I looked bad. It was bad.
Yeah.
We're extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to touch on something that you shared with me off the air, Tyson. We were talking kind of off the air, and you said we were talking about our DOCs.
Wait, Crystal's really scared what you're about to say. Did you see her look?
I'm always
I didn't.
I'm always
Scared
afraid
to
of what
death
he's going to
what's
say.
about to happen.
She does that all the time. Pretty much any time I open my mouth.
So we were talking about this crazy thing called addiction, and you shared with me. You asked me a question. You said, when you were using, did you feel like you were a better salesman? And you mentioned that you were working in car sales, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did that look like for you?
So, we talk about like, you hear about enablers and
Yeah.
but the universe can be an enabler sometimes when you're active. And when I was in active addiction, being a salesman, man, people I worked for, they knew that I was active, that I'm obviously abusing a lot of drugs.
Okay.
But in doing that, I'm able to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, as long as I don't run out of drugs. So I was spending a lot more time at the car lot. And, sure, the money could come in and it'd be made, but I have given an entire paycheck to my dealer.
Right.
That was my dealer at the time.
So
That was before the kid.
Right.
at that time, were you also using meth then?
No, I was oxys at that time.
He would steal mine when he would run out of oxys, though.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
would steal my meth, and then everything went bad.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it didn't matter, unmanageability is going to any lengths to change the way I feel. So if I was getting dope sick because I ran out of one substance, I wasn't just like, well, if I can't get that substance, I'm not going to use anything. I would absolutely put whatever into my body at that time, once I was sick. But for the most part, yeah, I was just sticking with oxys to show up to work, Wasn't much of a good worker on amphetamines.
You mean you weren't the top salesman when you were sidetracked by everything and anything?
Well, usually on meth, I was looking for the undercovers that were under the cars at the car lot, so didn't work out that great.
The community watch people that had formed a coalition to follow him.
Right.
This is called the
Meth psychosis.
The meth psychosis she's talking about.
Paranoia.
And I know, we make light of it, and it's been a while since we went through that together, and it's that saying that
Tragedy plus
time
time
equals humor.
Yeah.
But I think it's also really important to mention. I leave him out a lot because my older son. So he turned 10 right after I had our youngest son, and in that time, I lost custody of him. His father took me to court at the urging of my family, and I lost him. So he was with his real dad at the time. So there was a lot of other stuff going on that really wasn't funny.
Right.
But there's been enough time now where there are a lot of funny situations looking back on. But that was the seriousness of it. Like I lost custody of my child.
Wow.
Yeah. And
You said his name is Cole.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's now 27. Is that about right?
yeah. And that's going to lead us into our part 2.
Oh,
and I
sorry.
love part 2 because it's all about recovery. So join us in part 2. We're going to talk about their pathway to recovery, what their rock bottom was. We look forward to getting that part of the story, right?
Yes.
Cool. All right. We'll see you guys in part 2.
Head on.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller, sponsored by Steps Recovery Center and the Hilton Garden Inn.
I'm Desmond Lomax, one of the clinical executives here at Steps Recovery, and once you become of the Steps family, you're just a part of the Steps family. A lot of us have overcome substances, overcome addiction, and now we're able to help other people. Second of all, we're also going to help you in a way where you can afford to be helped. Third of all, we're going to give you the same quality that many organizations are charging 2 to 3 times, and it's more about you than it is about our organization.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
Welcome back. Episode 11, part 2. Part 2 is brought to you by the Hilton Garden Inn, St. George. It is always sunny and shiny at the Hilton Garden Inn in St. George. If you're traveling through St. George, Utah, be sure to check them out. Go to Google. They are awesome. They have great accommodations. Be sure to check them out. We're going to get back to Mr. and Mrs. Hanning's basically journey through addiction, and we're going to cross over into the recovery side of it. Before that, we have a little social media. We have a hotline you can call in if you want to call in a question to Dr. Sellers. You can send us an email at We Do Recover with Jared Miller at gmail.com. Why do I always struggle with that, Sean? It's rough. All right. So Chantel writes us, and she said, I just lost a friend to suicide on Friday. Honestly, though, I thought I would lose him to addiction, but instead I believe he took his own life because he couldn't take the addiction anymore. You guys are truly doing amazing things. It's amazing people like you that give hope. I just want to say thank you so much for sending that. You know, at times, despite popular belief, we do not get paid to do this. Me and Dr. Sellers do this 100%. We have sponsors that pay for the production and for people to stay when they come in from out of town. But we do this because we want to make a difference. We want to share a message of hope and give people like Tyson and Crystal Hannig an opportunity to come on and tell their journey of recovery and spread some hope. So thank you guys for being on. Sorry to cut you off. You got into a great part of what you were going through in your active addiction. Let me ask you this. Was that a big part of what made you decide, or maybe your rock bottom, transitioning into recovery?
Definitely. It was one of the most painful things that, that I experienced. Before active addiction, I had a lot of judgments about addicts and about people who had used, and especially about mothers who had lost their children due to using. I could not, for the life of me, understand how they could choose to have that life over their kids.
Right.
And then, there I was, that person. I had become everything that I had ever had these major judgments about. Now I was sitting there and I was that person. I know today that it's absolutely not a choice. It's that powerlessness. Like, I couldn't stop. I couldn't. I'd been arrested several times by this point. I was on probation. I still couldn't stop using. And after that, I made a decision. I was like, I'm never going to feel this pain. And the using got way worse. I think it was about another year of that hell. And I found myself in a bathroom getting ready to go to court for the judge to decide if I got to go to prison for a minimum of a year or treatment. And I was told by my probation officer at the time, and I'm going to mention his name because he's an amazing guy. It was Kim Segmiller. And he was pretty hardcore, but he told me, if you show up to court and you're not clean, you're going to prison. And I was in the bathroom and I was crying, literally had tears running down my face because I couldn't not use. Yeah. And I don't know what got into me, because normally I would have ran. But I showed up to court anyway, and I think he knew. I'm pretty certain. He was a pretty smart guy. Yeah. But he gave me the opportunity anyway and let me go to treatment. And that's a whole nother story, just getting there. But he actually came and picked me up from jail and drove me up there himself. Wow. So that was I had those two bottoms: losing my son, And then that, like, not being able to not use, like crying, absolutely 100% using against my own will.
Yeah.
And that it's really, I'm a slow learner, because that was the moment where I realized that I had a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can appreciate this because you're a therapist. Stop It Therapy. Have you seen the YouTube video on Stop It Therapy? Oh, it's a
No.
funny little skit. It just does not work, right? People don't understand that. But seriously, though, Stop It Therapy does not work. Like when you have
Just
somebody
stop it.
Just
Just
stop it. Yeah, so you have kind of people joke about it.
We
but
do.
Yeah, that it doesn't work. And I appreciate you sharing that because I'm sure there's some listeners that are experiencing that. Tyson, what did your rock bottom look like?
Oh my gosh. I mean, multiple visits to jail. I even overdosed and died. Luckily, my little brother was around and brought me back to life.
Wow. Is that through Narcan or how?
No, CPR.
Oh, wow.
And then paramedics came, picked me up. I don't even remember. I remember a cop being in my room at my mom's house. Of course, I'm 30 years old, living in my mom's basement. And me wanting them out of the room. And then a little bit of an ambulance ride, and then being at the hospital with my mom saying, breathe, keep breathing. And then it wasn't, I even came home and had this moment where I took the rest of the drugs I had, and I went and flushed them down the toilet.
Wow.
I would love to say that this is the end of the movie where the credits roll and I've got my fist in the air. But that's not how it goes in addiction, It was only a couple days later till I'm back using and ultimately I have this wonderful grandfather, man. And I don't know, I believe at the time he was watching some day television, maybe like Dr. Phil is like, you got to get your kid treatment, whatever he was saying. But it settled in with my grandfather, right?
Yeah.
And he would meet with me and say, hey, look, when you're ready for help, I'm here to help you. And in my head, with that active addiction, I was thinking, I just got to come up with a really good business plan. That's where he's trying to help me. Then one day I woke up with this moment of clarity and I'm like, oh my God, he's talking about putting me in treatment. And with that moment of clarity, I was ready. I was like, yeah, that's what I need to do. So I met with him for lunch and I told him, hey, look, I want to go to rehab.
Yeah.
And it was real quick after that. Like, I think it was like 2 days later, I'm in his car and we're driving down to Palm Springs getting dropped off at a treatment center, which, of course, when I'm getting dropped off at, I'm like, what did I do?
What did I get myself into? Yeah. So during this time, are you guys are together?
If you could call it that, that whole time was the on again, off again.
Okay.
I hate you. I don't even know why we're together. It's only because we had a kid. Get out of the house. And then, 2 days later, what are you doing? Well, I love you. Come back. I mean, it was, so we were officially, but it was, like I said, it was a mess. It would depend on the day. And as soon as I went to treatment and got clean, of course, he's like, but wait, we're still together.
One of the cool things about recovery is when you see somebody in recovery, when you're in active addiction, and you've been in active addiction with that person,
Yeah.
My wife got clean before I did.
It's powerful.
And I saw her, and I'm like, this is a totally different person, And so I wanted whatever she had, And that was really one of the encouraging things for me to actually ask for help, along with this crazy ego that was going on where I was like, well, if she looks that good, if I get clean, I'm going to be like Brad Pitt, like, but yeah, it is that you see that glow in them, and there's something different going on. And maybe that's part of that spiritual connection that you get in recovery, and just living, an honest life, drug free. And so I got to give credit to, just being in recovery to influence other people, who are active. That like, look, there's a different way of life.
There's a better side to this thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know, Dr. Sellers. I think he looks better than Brad Pitt. What do you think, man?
Oh, he's way better than Brad Pitt. he's selling himself way short.
Right.
That's what I thought too. Quite a compliment, though. I love that you said that you saw her. She looked amazing, right? Because you see that. The light comes back in their eyes, right? You can feel a presence about them that hasn't been there. It's been vacated. So tell us a little bit about you guys. At some point, obviously, you come back together, right?
Yes.
And you're both doing the recovery thing. Let's hear it on that.
So
Hold on before you start with that. It strikes me that, as you were talking about that getting clean has everything to do with quitting drugs and alcohol, but recovery has almost nothing to do with quitting drugs and alcohol.
yeah.
Like it's the work that people do that bring the light back in their eyes that really is recovery. And I think you described that really well. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out. Now, go back to your question. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No,
that's
that's
a great
great.
point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great point.
So I got clean. It was about 7 months before he went to treatment, and I had our son, the young one, who was 2 years old at this time. And I don't know, I had this crazy continuing care counselor that was, oh my God, I was terrified of her. I was petrified of her. She scared me. I thought she hated me, all these things. But when I got done with the residential part, and I was in a different city, I made a decision to stay there with her in that for my continuing care, because I was uncomfortable. I didn't want to, but at the same time, I knew it was the best thing for my recovery. I had built kind of a foundation there, and I didn't know anybody in St. George that was clean.
Yeah.
And
So a little bit of a geographical for you.
a little bit, yeah,
Yeah.
about 50 miles. Wasn't too bad, but so she talked to me, and I would not have made this commitment ever had I not been afraid of her. But she talked me into making a commitment to stay out of a relationship, like no sex, no relationship for a year, a whole year,
A year.
a year, a year.
Tyson's going a year, man.
And so I agreed to it. And I can tell you it was one of the best things that I ever did for myself. It gave me the ability to see that that I can be self-supporting. Like I could stand on my own, not alone, but stand on my own. I could take care of myself. I could provide for myself and take care of myself emotionally, because I always needed to be in a relationship. I needed that other person to love me, to know that I was lovable.
Yeah.
So being able to do that. So anyway, I made that commitment. He's calling me from treatment because I have the kid, our beautiful son. And he's like,
Financial burden.
yes. he's all like, oh, we're together, but I still love you. And so I tell him about this commitment that I made, and he sat there for a minute, and then he's like, well, why don't I do the same thing? And then we can just see where we're at the end of that. And I was like, okay, sounds cool.
Tyson, how did you feel when you got that news?
No.
What? Go
I
ahead.
don't like what's happening here.
I love it.
No, that it was good because, like she said, I was in a safe place. I'm in treatment. And I'm one of those, like she says she's a slower learner. Like I am really slow. Like just barely out of ape stage in evolution,
Oh boy, listen to this guy.
at the time I'd been in treatment. Like I remember the exact day. I was at a 60-day program, and it was day 48 when I realized I had a problem. I'm like, oh yeah. And so that, being told the only thing I had to change was everything.
Yeah.
People, places. I'd changed my playground, so I thought it's a good idea not to come back home. And so I ended up checking into a sober living in Los Angeles,
Okay.
And so I actually liked the idea as far as like, hey, and plus it was in Hollywood. And like I said, Brad Pitt.
right. I love it.
So yeah, it worked out great, and I do agree. It was really good for my recovery because it gave me time to really get to know myself, focus on me, my recovery. And at this point, I don't have a counselor. I'm not involved in anything where I was in trouble, you know. And I just got a sponsor, you know, and got into a 12-step fellowship, you know.
Got you. Yeah.
So that and, you know, worked out all that stuff with a fellowship, you know.
I love that. Yeah. Recovery has a lot of different faces and a lot of different avenues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's beautiful that worked for you. Sellers, do you got anything before I hit him with a question?
No, I do not.
Okay, so I am dying
As
to
soon
know.
as you start the question, I'll interrupt.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds right. Okay, so I'm like, I feel like we are like in a movie, right? I'm waiting for the credits to roll. But so you're both working on yourselves. At what point do you guys come back together, right? And do this thing as a couple in recovery? I also want to get Crystal. You touched on your oldest son. You lost rights, right? Which is super hard. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us about both those two topics, if you wouldn't mind.
You want to start or I'll go first. He takes over when he starts. So we did keep that commitment, and he eventually, like, we talked about it, and we talked about me going out there, but it turned out that he came back to St. George. And I stayed up in Cedar City, and we dated for a little while. And then, I was afraid, terrified. I had an amazing sponsor at the time that told me that who his sponsor is, what meetings he goes to, and what step he's on is absolutely none of my business. However, whether or not he has a program that he's working is. And as long as I'm doing what I need to do, regardless of what he does, I will be okay. And so I jumped and came back down here. As far as my older son, Cole, that's actually a really cool story. So I stayed clean, stayed in recovery, stayed involved also with the 12-step fellowship. And I started being able to see him on the weekends and stuff. They just let me. It's obvious when somebody's in recovery. Like, you can see it, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to prove anything. I never had to go back to court. His father is actually a really amazing guy. And he let me see him, and when he was 16, he came back to live with me at his request.
Financial burden.
But it was really cool because I became a safe person for him. My house is a safe place, and he could see that. And so that was really amazing. One thing that I wanted to share that's actually super cool, one of those like universal conspiring things. So the counselor that I had that I was terrified, there were actually, like, I grew to love her. And there were some things that she did and said and suggestions that really saved my butt. And her name is Camille. I think I just said that. However, she also works for Steps. Awesome. So we actually work for the same company now. And so that's pretty cool. And yes, my older son and I have an amazing relationship as well. A lot of that's been repaired. I got to do that and listen to him. So that was cool.
That is amazing. It had to feel good when your son came back into your life, right?
Oh yeah.
And I've gone through some similar stuff, and I don't talk on my kids just for respect of my kids and my ex-wife a lot, but I'm waiting for that day. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
It's coming.
There's hope, always.
Tyson, let's get your side of that while I recover over here.
Okay. So yeah, I'm living in Los Angeles, and we're doing this kind of long distance thing.
Yeah.
You know, we're not tied up in each other's lives 24/7. You know, once again, she's working on her recovery. I'm working on mine. You know, and I have a great job down there. Once again, I've been in sales. It's not hard for me to get back into this thing. And I refer to us addicts who burn our lives up as second half teams, man. I really do. I
love that.
And the first half.
Wait. When you say you had a great job, did you star in Ocean's 11?
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes, it was.
That wasn't it?
Right when we were getting that together.
Okay, sweet.
But Danny Ocean, you know, we had different views. But anyway, so
second half teams. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, first half is really sloppy for us, you know. So being a second half team guy, you know, and in recovery, that's really what gets you there, you know. And just being honest, man. I mean, for the first time in my life, admitting I had a problem was probably the first time I was like really honest deep down inside, you know? So, her and I had communication. It was also one of the first times where like the money I'm making, I'm sending to her without her even like, hey, do you need money? She's like, no, not really. Well, cool. I'm going to send you some anyway, you know, make things a little more comfortable. And I'm no longer living this self-centered, selfish, freaking self-seeking, self-gratifying, like, you know, I'm thinking different.
Right. Your perspective had shifted.
Yeah, I'm starting to get some spiritual principles in my life, really.
Yeah.
And so one of the guys I had worked with in the past, you know, calls me and says, hey, you know, opening up a business here in St. George, I'd really like you to manage it, you know. And that's another cool thing about recovery is the universe just kind of sets things in front of you where you're like, nah, man, I really had things figured out down here in LA. I was talking about moving her down there. And it was just one of those things where like the more I denied it, A, the higher I got paid, but B, it just really started going, no, this is what I need to do. You know, go back to southern Utah, safer place to raise a family for sure. And what else is crazy is like, this is like 2007, and it was not like right after I left with, you know, a job, guaranteed salary, you know, this and this, that this recession hits, you know. So,
oh, wow.
So like the universe just kind of seems to line up good when I'm doing the right thing and I'm in recovery.
A friend of ours, Heston Cherry, has this saying, and I love it. Is it odd or is it God? Mm-hmm. Right? And I've stolen that from him, and props to you, Heston. I did get it from him. So I'm disclosing I heard it first from him, but I love that because you're talking about things just naturally started to line up for you and started to work out for you.
Yeah. And, you know, versus resisting, you know, against the current, just jump in and go with it, you know.
Stop trying to swim upstream.
So, we, you know, came back here and we rented a place together, and it was, hey, cool, we can live together. We're not at each other's throats 24/7. And, you know, not saying that we don't have our little tiffs sometimes, but it's usually over silly things. And by the way, being in a relationship for a long time means that you got to put up with certain little things. Like sometimes you come home and there might be something that looks like zebra stripe, but it's made out of like some buckets and like this is some kind of decoration art thing that
Are you picking on my zebra
that
plant
you
holder?
just can't stand, but you live with it over there just because, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're renting a place and we end up buying a house, and timing, once again, universe. I have a job. I have this, you know, salary coming in. The market just crashes. So, you know, we had options for homes. It's stuff that we wouldn't have been able to afford in a different market, you know. So, yeah, we're blessed. I mean, we still live in the same place for 11 years now. Like I said, we did get married in 2012. We have been together for, you know, however you interpret the story we just told, for almost 18 years, you know. And we would not be together if it wasn't for, you know, having some kind of recovery in our life, you know, not just going to treatment and, you know, going through that and leaving and just trying to live life on life's terms that way. I don't believe that would work for us at all. No. You know?
Yeah, well said.
A big fan of, like, you know, continuing to treat the disease that I have. Like, it's there. I still have thoughts sometimes. Sometimes it's still my first thought. Something painful will happen and I'm like, oh, I want to use. Or it's a little different, but, you know, then it's followed up with well, that's a weird idea. You know, and I don't. You know, that, you know, the fellowship that I belong to, I still work a program. And I think it's also important. Like, I work in addiction, obviously. I work in substance abuse and recovery, and that is not my program. You know, I need my own program. I think it's really, you guys were talking about the God thing, and I have my best friend refers to her higher power as the conspiracy, and I love that. But it's been amazing. We've gone through cancer, relapse. He's relapsed a couple times. That was fun. Kicked him out of his own house while he was paying the mortgage.
Yeah.
We've gone through a lot, and I still feel that love for him.
Yeah, that's amazing. You guys really are such a great example. I love that you guys are giving back. Thank Tyson, Crystal, thank you guys for coming on and sharing your journey of the singing call addiction and your life in recovery today. You're both great, amazing examples of people.
Great time. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. This has been a production from a podcast studio.